Welcome back. Well, keeping our focus on that cabinet retreat that has just been concluded today, they'll get to be sworn in. We've got Mr. Emmanuel Oyinlofo here with us. He's a performance management consultant. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigeria.
Well, you've been keeping tabs on what's been going on, and lots of people, everybody, in fact, looking forward to the outcome. Ultimately, the president has given them that indication and that directive that they need to ensure that they perform. Now, you are in this field, but from the indicators that you've seen, are they on the right path such that you can say that, well, at the end of the day, they may have been equipped as a result of this retreat to then kick on from there?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Now, the retreat itself is a step in the right direction. And when you listen to some of the things that Mr. President said, as purpose for holding the retreat, he said that it's an opportunity for minister designates to know themselves, for them to recalibrate, look at what has happened between 2015 and now, and then for them to chart a new direction. Then I think one of the other things he said was, that he would like them to understand their roles and responsibilities. All of it, good thinking, if I may say. Now the problem, which has been the dominant problem of the Nigerian public service, is the fact that the performance management is weak in the public service. In fact, even in the private sector, you'll find that a lot of companies rise and fall on, performance management.
Why is this the case?
Yeah, the case is that in most cases, they've not instituted an effective performance management system. If you don't have an effective performance management system, and there are a number of issues, that a framework that you must institute, to make it possible.
Is that also known as what, KPIs?
Yeah, fine. KPIs is a tool, within the performance management.
But not the framework.
No, not the framework. It's one of the tools. Is a tool that you will use, for measuring performance.
Okay, let's take you through this because, at the end of that two-day session, they came up with some lists, which we call the to-do list for the ministers designate, which they also read. So if we could take a look at the very first one of that, because they say that they were going to introduce a new cabinet memorandum review and appraisal process, which is aimed at improving the quality and efficiency of government decision-making and policy implementation and increasing coordination and coherence within the government. And the second part of that is they're going to be given a mandate, based on the assigned ministry that they'll be given, and then they'll spell out priorities, deliverables, and timeline. Now the third part is there's going to be a robust monitoring and evaluation framework, and that will also be put in place to track implementation of all policies and programs over the next 4 years. Do those pass for you as the requisite framework?
They are statements of good intentions, but in terms of making sure they get done, the framework is not there at the moment, from what I know of the public service.
What would constitute this framework for you?
Okay. Now, let's start from the very beginning, what they did in this 2 days retreat would have been like a part of it. And that is charting a strategic direction, for the country in the next 4 years. Now, with that, the ministers should be able to go back to their ministries with strategic objectives, for their ministries. Now, I will expect the president to still call another retreat where they will do actual strategic planning. Now, in what they did in this particular event, I can imagine that it was more of telling them things, Now, Now, the next one should be an opportunity for the ministers to be able to tell things. That is what they are what they would do, you know.
If I could jump in. If
Okay.
you say that you expected them to come up with objectives and strategies of programs of what they want to do, isn't that going to be a subset of the big picture, which is the plan and the program of this administration? So they will just come up with perhaps ways that they think they can best implement those policies.
Yes, you're right to some degree. They should come back and discuss it in council. In fact, they may need like a week, you know, to do this, where each minister in council should be able to tell, you know, the council that this is where Ministry A is in terms of A, B, C, D. This is the strategic objective. This is how we are going to achieve it. These are the timelines that we think we can achieve it. And maybe the funding. It may not be detailed analysis of the funding, no, but ballpark figures. Then in that council, all the ministers will be able to make inputs to say, are you not too ambitious in this area? Are you're thinking we don't quite understand it? You know, such issues. Now, when that happens, virtually every minister has got an idea as to where all the ministries are headed to.
Pardon me. Is the Ministry of Works supposed to understand what the Minister of Health and Minister of Health want to do in the health sector?
Even Mr. President said that it is important that the left hand should know what the right hand is doing. He said it in his address. Now, when they are all not together to discuss it, and they all have opportunities to make inputs, you know, what tends to happen is that they operate in silos.
So if you don't mind me asking this question, how long do you think it'll take the ministers to get comfortable in their seats? They don't get assigned their portfolios until after the swearing, according to the press release, you know, from the office of the Secretary to the government. They don't get assigned. I mean, from what you have said, maybe if they had gotten their portfolios well ahead of time, they would have done some thinking ahead. But now you're saying after they have been assigned their different portfolios, they now still need to go back to do some thinking. So that's going to rub off some time.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I would have expected that before they went for this retreat, they probably would have been assigned their portfolios. But nothing spoiled. You know, they have not been assigned their portfolios. They will be, you know, maybe today or next. Now, after that, they need to come back and sit together, you know, to all rub minds as to these broad, like what you, what was shown a while ago, but these broad goals and objectives, how are they going to achieve it? You know, now, why it is very important is that there is need for integration and interdependence of the plans. So when you allow them to just go back and make their plans, then, I mean, you leave it open, you know, for them to operate the way we have always operated. Now, that is not even the problem area. The problem area that I've noticed in our public service is that we do not take operational planning serious. You know, most organizations don't have operational plans. That is what in the private sector you call business plans. Most organizations don't have it. In the public service, most of them, you know, do not. They just have the strategic goals. Now, for them to be able to do what has been described, you know, to do appraisals and all that, on what basis? If you don't have the detailed plans as to how you are going to achieve each strategic objective, how? It will only be guesswork. It is on the basis of the operational plans, which are very detailed, that is detailed as in week by week.
Is this going to be for those new ministers, because the returning ones, this is just
It should be for
tea party
everybody.
for them.
No.
If they already started out, if they return to the ministries where they were initially,
Yes, they should make their ministries to, to develop a culture of developing operational plans. If Channels doesn't have, a clear-cut operational plan, and they call you for appraisal, I mean, it's guesswork.
So what are some of the things that you expect would be in this operational plan for each of the ministers? What are some of these components that you're asking?
Let's take Ministry of Work again that he used. Let's say the strategic plan is to build 400 kilometers, just an example, to build 400 kilometers of roads in the next 4 years. Now they can split it into yearly number of roads that they can build. Let's say 100 kilometers per year. Now, that is the strategic plan. Now, when you come to the operational plan, there are detailed activities that must happen in order for 100 kilometers of road to be built, say, this year. Things like there must be contractor selection, there must be road design, there must be procurement of materials. There are so many things that has to happen. So those are the things that they must plan to those minute details. And on a month-by-month basis, you will now determine whether they have achieved what they slated for month 1. I don't know if you get it.
So when you, if I may pardon me, when you outline these things, the bulk stops at the civil service, the public service, as you have said. And there's been this conversation around, whether or not we have an effective public service in the country. In fact, I remember we had this discussion about corporate governance, how to have a cutting-edge civil service in the country. So you have listed, these procedures, these steps. The question is, are we ready? Is the civil service ready to take on this huge task?
I don't think so.
Why?
I don't think so. I was aware that I think either 2008, 2009, if I'm not mistaken, that the Office of the Head of Service, decided to change the performance management system in the public service. And they started the process. I was aware because I was one of the private sector people that were brought in, to rub minds with the public servants.
Right.
Now we started. Unfortunately, the lady who was in charge of driving the process was transferred to another ministry, to a ministry. And that was the end of the story. Now, you'll find that they have created offices for performance management. But since then, nothing has happened by way of changing that, that performance management system. Nothing tangible has happened.
Mr. Nilofa, we need to go to Abuja because there are other perspectives as well, expectations too, on what they expect to happen. But we'll come back to this not long afterwards. Markwa?
Yes, we have with us Chief Goodson Okoye, who is the National Chairman of the UDP and National Secretary Coalition for New Nigeria. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, you have heard, and I'm sure you've also followed what has been going on with the swearing in of the new ministers, which will happen today. It's been quite a journey to get here. What are you expecting from this cabinet when it's eventually set up?
Well, essentially, thank you very much. Well, essentially, the ministers are supposed to acquaint themselves with certain provisions of the Constitution in the discharge of their duties. And but during the clearing in the National Assembly, certain key things were missing, and that fact points the direction where some of the things will go. Definitely, we will expect them to do well in the different portfolios they'll be given. But performing those jobs will depend on what the ideas of the country is, what the idea of what do they regard Nigerians. And
did you get a sense of that during the screening?
And that's what I'm saying. The thing, most of the time it was take a bow. And then in taking a bow, it doesn't tell Nigerians who those people are, what they believe, what they think. What do you even think about government? What do you know about government?
Yeah,
define government for us.
You didn't take a bow without giving an address.
No, address as to what? Your CV. Everybody has a CV. A CV that is as long as from here to Gogola doesn't mean you can discharge the job when you're there. And again, the key question that anybody that should be Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria should be asked was not asked. And that is, where is your family? Going by the wordings of the old book, wherever a man's treasure is, that's where his heart is. And of course, I should believe that every man, his treasure should be his family. If your family, for instance, is in France, and your Minister of Health, for instance, and they are telling you, Honorable Minister, the hospitals are closing, the workers are protesting, you wouldn't give a damn because your family is not here. They're not going to go to any of the hospitals. If you're Minister of Education, for instance, and your family is, say, in the US or in Britain, and schools are closing, the students are demonstrating or lecturers are demonstrating for some key issues, and your family is not here.
Does that really matter in Nigeria nowadays?
Of course it does.
When we know that people have their families here, but
no. A private person.
There's some services that they need, and they're not using public services.
A private individual. If you can afford it, your children can be in the moon. But if you're to deliver service, okay, whose children are you going to be doing experiment with? So you're going to be minister over who?
No,
for those that can't afford it.
The point I'm making is for those who are here, even if everybody answered in the affirmative that indeed their entire family were here,
find that out.
You know, health services, you do not necessarily have to use government services.
No. If you
education services,
no, you have to show that example. If you're in public service, you must make the public institutions work. So that you show example, and that's part of the reason the people are still nostalgic about the 1960s, because we're not aware that those people, their children were here, and then they made the systems work. And the foundations they laid then is still what is carrying Nigeria. They were desirous of doing something that would be better than what they even saw. But the situation where you don't even, nothing, I mean, so what attaches you to what the job you're doing? So you have to have that feel that perhaps if I'm Minister of Works and the roads are not good, perhaps one day my family may pass that road and there will be a problem. So you must take out, just like one president, I think the president of one of these Eastern European countries, let's not put my picture there.
I see the point
hold on, put the picture of your family so that when you're taking a decision, you look at them and then make up your mind on what to do. That's very key. And once we miss out on that, and then you miss out on constitutional provision, okay, how many of these people know about Chapter 2 of the Constitution? Section 13, Section 14, and Section 15. And what those things mean? Fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. How many of them were asked, are you conversant with this? What is the purport of Section 13 or Section 14 or Section 15? And of course, if you look at 14.2, it tells you that government institutions should not be populated in such a way there is preponderance of one particular section of the country in any service.
So
these are the issues.
Sir, I see the point you're making, sir.
Yes.
I mean, I
Totally
get the point that you're making. But what I'm trying to say is that even if their families were here, there is nothing compelling anyone to, compulsorily send them to government institutions. People have suggested that we make that a part of our laws, but as we speak, they are yet to be a part of our laws. Because
it has become like the norm. Before, it used to be the exception, where you have public, private institutions. In my own, I went to a public school. I went to a public secondary school. I went to University of Lagos. University of Lagos is not a private institution.
I'm going to ask, are your children today
of course they are here.
Institutions?
They are here. They're here
in
Nigeria.
Public institutions?
Well, I'm not holding any public office. If I'm a minister, that's what will happen.
The point
but you see, the point is, if you're a private citizen, like during my own time, some of my mates, that their parents were very rich, went to private schools. But the point is, if you're in public service, You should be there. By 1979, my father was in the House of Reps. So he wouldn't have been doing things that will negate what they are talking about, national institutions and all that. We must make public institutions work. And the only way they can work is that the operators have a personal feeling of what they're doing. If they don't have that personal touch and they are just like garbage in, garbage out, we're not going to move anywhere. So there should be something that makes them believe that this can get to them. If they don't have that feeling, whatever you do, whatever he wants to do is what he does. So for me, the ministers, we expect them to do well for the country. Whichever may do, there is need for massive improvement. There is need for massive expansion in a whole lot of places. But like I said, most of these things are driven from the home. Like everybody talks about discipline. When people are not disciplined from home, that's why you create problems outside. But when the discipline starts from home, so most of these things must start from the home. Families have been taking a whole lot of heat. And we find most families have been destroyed. So from the 1980s, 1990s, there's been consistent pressure on families. And once you have broken families, you're going to have broken systems. For the people that are there, that have gone outside, most of them that they even send their children outside, their children attend public schools in those foreign countries. So why can't you make our own work? And you can only make your own work if you have a personal feeling that whatever decision you're making, whatever policy you're implementing may affect you somehow. It's not about whether it's a must that their children must go there, but if you want to also show that what you're doing is proper. Okay, my child is in that school, and that school is working well.
We don't have that now.
So we don't have, but we must have them. That we don't have them is not an excuse. For goodness sake, I mean, most of the things...
You want the president to make that a part of the requirement?
Of course,
to serve in his cabinet?
It has to be that. That's the way to do it. We can't keep doing the wrong things and say, oh, we can no longer do the right thing. The right thing is that these public institutions must work. Because any society that cannot provide and protect for the poor that are many can never protect or provide for the rich that are few. Therefore, there is need for these things to be done. The public secondary schools should be able to work. Okay, for instance, federal government colleges are still working. In some, to a large extent, most of them are still working. But that's as compared to state secondary schools. Most of the state secondary schools, at a point, some states have handed them over to their former owners, like the churches, and then some other organizations and some private individuals. Because somehow, there are certain things that the state cannot, but the state can lay fundamental rules and guidelines on how these things are done. But these are the things that are missing. But those things are missing because there is no personal touch. People have to act in a way. Government is not an abstract. It is supposed to be something that is dynamic, that people feel. And then it grows, and then you use it for the good of all.
So if that doesn't happen, would you still be optimistic that this cabinet could deliver something meaningful to Nigeria? Well,
it will depend. Now it will be an individual thing. More so when you're now saying, when we're now hearing ministers have to report to SGF, and then some other person will handle this and handle that. This is not make for a practical development in government. A president should be able to look at his appointees, look them in the eyes, look at their body language, ask them some questions about their place, and then go there. Some of my friends that used to be governors, sometimes they give people jobs when they were there. And then sometimes they go there on their own in the night. And when they ask you, this project going on in XYZ local government, what are you saying about it? How far? And maybe the contractor will say, oh, Your Excellency, we have reached about 70% completion. And the man asks you, I say, there is this building on this side of the road. The windows are not there. In fact, it's even at the foundation level. So how are you saying 60%? There are some questions he will ask you. You will know that they have been there. But if it is just reports, they bring a report and give to you, give you a paper, you can look at it and just drop it there. But there has to be things. There has to be personal thought. There has to be personal thought when you are in government. The way we are going is not the way that will produce the result. But perchance, there may be people that are charismatic that will push their ministries to an area where they can produce results.
Do you see elements of those kinds of people in this cabinet? Well,
it's the same old song. It's all the same people that have been there. So, for me, unless there is divine intervention, that's because, of course, the heart of a man is in God's hand. God can always touch anybody to do things that you never thought you would be able to do. Bearing that, I don't see much. What are the things? Okay, you are doing a retreat. Fine. Retreat for who? Where are the ministers going to function? Are they going to function in heaven or in Ghana? The ministers are going to function in Nigeria. Therefore, the public should be able to know this is what the retreat is about. These are the things we are telling this minister, so that you can also checkmate them. But when we keep running government as if it's a syndicate, it doesn't make sense. You have to make the human beings you are leading.
So the public
to feel it. Yes, they should be. They should be able to do. This is what this retreat is about. These are what we are telling this minister, so that if you find them wanting, these are the things you should do. But we've gotten to a point where the citizens are just despondent, they are just watching, government just says it, oh, well, government has said it, because, like I've always said, right from independence till today, we have not been able to retool the apparatus of state in a way that works and touches the people.
Well, I've been told we're totally out of time.
Oh,
Mr. Godson Okoye, I have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. As National Chairman of UDP and also the National Secretary Coalition for a New Nigeria. And that's where we leave it for this segment. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment. Please stay with us.
Well, now you know what will be coming up a little later. Though we'll still have Mr. Oyinlofo here with us for his concluding moment. But about this, this cabinet retreat, where people think, okay, well, look, after all this much ado about the retreat, is this necessarily going to give them the magic wand to make all things new with the economy? So is that how this is supposed to turn out at the end of the day?
Like I said at the beginning, this is just one step. There should be several other steps, that will lead to that magic wand. So if they don't take those other steps, well, we'll continue to have the kind of performances we've been having.
But you know what people think about meetings? People look, are they going to keep having all of these meetings? Are they not supposed to just get to their ministries? You have the civil service, they've been there for a long time. Kick on from there and deliver.
Planning meetings are very crucial. If you don't plan rigorously and with discipline, you've planned to fail. And what I'm talking about is something that you do at the beginning. Thereafter, you continue to implement the plan and continue to tweak the plan.
Okay. Well, our colleagues are there. I don't know if they're privy to some of these plans. It's right there in Abuja where the ministerial retreat, it's holding. Ibrahim and Gloria, good morning. So, what do we expect today?
Oh, well, morning to you in the studio. We're here bright and early as to be expected, and then security checks, of course, takes prominence today as you have a lot of people coming from outside, so to speak. You maybe have the spouses and other relatives of the ministers. You have technicians from various media houses coming up. So there is a whole lot of checking going on. Security has been beefed up. But talking about the inauguration proper, usually what happens is we're likely going to see the ministers being sworn in batches. I don't know how many numbers per batch, but then in batches, and then after taking the oaths of office, the president would be making an inaugural speech where I want to believe he would use today to hammer in the message he's been sending that there is a whole lot of work to be done in the next 4 years. He said so at several points during the retreat. Today would be like perhaps a day to cap it up. But as far as the portfolios are concerned, the president is keeping that very, very close to his chest, at least up to this moment. But we'll have to wait up until maybe during the inauguration speech. That's when we find out for sure. I'm saying maybe because the announcement might be delayed further. Gloria.
Well, certainly. I mean, today is a day, all eyes are on the president to see how all of this will pan out, And again, I understand that certain ministers have expressed interest in some portfolios, and they have done this because they think this is how best they can help the president achieve his next level agenda. And so we have some ministers expressing interest in maybe grade A ministries, for instance, because I sort of have an understanding of what has been going down from what we've been feeling as we've been getting on the corridors of power. For instance, we have, I understand that Minister of Niger Delta just might be going to Senator Godswill Akpabio. And then we also get feelers that we have works going to former governor of Osun State. We have, for instance, finance, which came as a surprise. But these are feelers, certainly, you know. This came as a surprise. The former minister of education just started going to finance. And then we also have Amechi for transport, you know, and then Malami for the AGF. But, you know, for emphasis, this are still feelers. And it's up to the president to decide whether or not he would grant these subtle requests, you know, for instance.
Well, so basically, that's what we have. We're here live and we'll be keeping you posted. Channels Television is covering that inauguration live.
But we expect again that, I mean, they're well familiarized with the roles and responsibilities, right? So
Absolutely, especially after that retreat, two-day retreat that they discussed several issues. One would safely assume that the ministers have what it takes and are prepared to work. In any case, they've also said they are willing to discharge such duties in whatever offices. But again, one also hopes and thinks that the president, in his wisdom, would be putting the round pegs in round holes so that they are able to deliver on their mandates optimally. Chamberlain.
You, Gloria and Ibrahim, well done. I will keep tabs on that as well. So back to this, but this Mr. President can keep secret. He's keeping everything close to his chest. Let us know a little bit of these things before long.
Well, there's something that
the masquerade will soon be unmasked.
It will be just today, but you know,
Just
there is
today.
something that is not close to his chest. The fact that the ministers must work with civil servants.
Well,
you know,
yeah.
the one that Chamberlain mentioned the other time. You know,
And by the way, I'm just wondering, how well equipped would you say the civil service are? Because these are the people they're going to fall back on.
Well, it depends on which area, but in terms of performance management, you know, the what they use, you know, to ginger people to do their work is weak, like I said. For example, the way you get promoted in the civil service, you know, is that you sit for an exam. 60% of what will determine, you know, whether you get promoted or not is that you sit for an exam. Now, you find that a lot of civil servants, you know, bury themselves in trying to read and pass an exam.
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
No, that's fine. But that is measuring them on performance is like 20%.
So maybe they should get targets.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes, objectives and targets.
Oh.
You know, but they are not at that stage yet. There's only one organization that I know of. I don't know if maybe there are others, which is the Nigerian Ports Authority, that is making efforts in that direction, you know, to start issuing targets, you know, to its employees.
That'll be interesting.
Now, when you don't do that, what is it? I mean, how do you hold anybody accountable? How do you hold any employee accountable? The president talked about holding them accountable. You know, it is difficult.
Well, all right. That could make the media's job a little easier, I guess, if they were to do that. But we'll have to end at that point. I will appreciate your comment on this morning. Mr. Emmanuel Nyinofo is a performance management consultant.